Hello guys, welcome to Online Web Tutor presented by Proof Solutions team. I am Sanjay. We are learning CodeIgniter framework beginner tutorial and this is our part 4. Inside this video session guys, we will discuss about basics of URL routing. And also guys, if you are a beginner to the channel then please don't forget to subscribe and keep watching our previous video sessions to get the clear concept about CodeIgniter framework tutorial. So in our last video session guys, we have made our first program in CI and run into the local browser. So if you go to editor, now inside this application folder structure, we have made a controller called site.php. Inside that we have also, inside config folder, we have also updated our routes.php file and simply we have actually assigned our default controller to welcome to site. And inside this site controller, we have two different methods. First is index and second is about. Also we have seen that how can we call these two methods from our browser. So back to browser. Now if I suppose want to call our about method, so what will be the syntax? Syntax is suppose index.php for the first time, and also we can remove index.php from URL. So this we will run in our upcoming videos. Now we have the controller called site. Inside site controller we have called the method called about. So if I press enter, now this is about the method. So if I copy this URL, back to slides, now if I open a new tab and pasting it here. So basically this is our site URL. This is our project. Now this is our project folder name. So if I break all this URL into different forms, so suppose I'm going to break this HTTP localhost. So let's say that this is our web server. Next what we have, this is our folder structure, means this is our project folder. So if I write here, let's say that this is our project folder, and inside that index.php is included by CodeIgniter, but we can remove it, so don't worry at all. Now next, this is our controller name. So if I write here, this is our controller name, and finally we have the method name into the URL. So let's say that this is our method name. So this was the URL guys we have studied in our last video session, but now here we have no concept about URL routing in CodeIgniter. So how can we start over that? So for that, I have some statements of the definitions that we have to cover inside this video. So basically the first question is, what are routes? So routes are responsible for responding to URL requests. Routing matches the URL to the predefined routes. If no route match is found, then CodeIgniter throws a page not found an exception. It means that suppose we have opened any URL to this web browser. So after typing any of the URL, firstly the CodeIgniter matches inside this routes.php. It is finding that the route is defined here or not. If suppose it is not defined, so it will give an exception, something called page not found or 404 error. Suppose if I type suppose about 4, as we know that about 4 does not exist into our controller's method as well as inside this routes.php. So if I press enter here, as we have error something called page not found. So back to slides. Next what we have, routes are defined using the formula. Basically this is our simple formula to define our routes. We can understand about the whole concept of routing using this syntax. Firstly the web server, what we have seen here. So if I go here, this is our web server. Now next what we have the controller name. As we can see that this is our controller name. Next what we have called method name. So here we have defined about as a method name, but right now inside this syntax, as we can see that this is our web server, this is controller, this is method, and now again we have an extra parameter, something called parameters. Right now we haven't seen so far about the concept of parameters in URL, but inside this video guys we are going to control over this parameter also. So this is the syntax about passing controller, method and the parameter to our URLs. Back here, this is a simple example. Suppose we have made inside our site controller a service method is there. Inside this service method, we are going to pass a parameter. It means that service method expects a parameter from us. So we are going to pass a parameter. So inside this simple statements, we can understand that site is the controller name. Next, services is the method name. And finally, this is the parameter. Now, let's go ahead and operate all these things by using this controller and by using this routes.php. Now, if I again back to our browser, inside this URL, as we type about, here is our syntax. Here is our statement what we have provided inside this method. Now what we want that someone type about info and press enter. So how can we handle this URL? Means we want that site / about info is our URL, but we want to redirect inside our about method. So how can we redirect that? So firstly, back to our editor inside routes.php. Let's make a route. Let's route. Inside this route, the first parameter is site, and inside this site controller, we are going to execute about our route something called about info. So about info, this is not the method name, this is our route name. So after finding this route, we are going to redirect something called site and about. After finding this route something called site about info, we are going to redirect our user to the about method. So if I save this file, again back here, reload this page, and now we are landed on the same page what we have in the about section. Again, if I back to editor, let's make a method inside here and something, let's say public function, and we are going to make a method something called contact info. Inside this method, we are going to write simple statements, let's say that within h1 tag, this is contact us page. Now inside this routes.php, I am going to copy and paste this line, and let's say that instead of about info we have just contact, and after finding this contact route, we are going to redirect inside this contact info method. So if I type it here, save this file, back to our browser. Now instead of about info, if I type contact, press enter, successfully we are landed on the contact us page. This is our route name instead of our method name. As we have seen from the syntax is that controller, and this is our method name. But finding this route name, we are going to inside this routes.php. From this file, we have picked our contact info method. So this is how we can control over a route system. Next we have to see about the parameters. So let's say that inside this sites.php, I'm going to make another method. So let's say public function, and let's say service. Inside this service, and also let's say echo, this is our service page. And why not, actually we are going to wrap this inside h3 tag. So this is our service page. Again, if I back to routes.php, let's make a route and something, let's say service. And after finding this route name service, we are going to redirect on this service method. So copy and paste it here, save this file, back here, and instead of contact, if I type service, and this is our service page. Inside this URL, if I type 1 here, as we can see that this is an extra parameter we have passed. But we want that this parameter should be readable inside this method. What we are going to pass inside the next optional parameters, we are going to receive that. So how can we receive that? So firstly, go to routes.php. Either you can define a syntax to receive the parameters, or directly inside this controller, if I type id here, and also let's concatenate with this id value, and if I go here, press here, and this is the value that we are getting from the URL called 1. If I type here something 4, this is our 4 value. So directly actually we have completed this request by controller name, method name, and the parameter name. We have actually handled all these things inside this site controller. But for the development purpose, this is not the proper way to flow inside the CodeIgniter syntax. Firstly, we have to define any route about the parameter inside this routes.php. Then again, it will find that associated method inside this controller. So how can we define our syntax? So inside site controller, we have method called service. Inside service, we are going to receive a parameter. So for that, we are going to use a syntax. So if I back to slides, I put some placeholders. Placeholders basically, so if I go here, we are going to pass called any. Inside this any, it means that we are free to pass any numeric value as well as with the characters value. This is only the placeholder name. It does not mean that we can pass a specific value. It means that we can pass any numeric as well as any alphanumeric as well as character value. Again, we have a placeholder, something called colon symbol, and this is about num. It indicates that we are going to pass our numeric value, but it does not mean that we can pass any value inside this placeholder also. But remember, this is all about the naming convention of CodeIgniter. It means that this is only for the documentation. It is only for the understand that if I pass any value inside a route, it means that we are going to pass any value. If I go pass it here, it means that we are going to pass one numeric value. This is for only for the understanding purpose. Back to editor. Let's say that inside our service controller, we are going to pass our value something called any. It means that, or let's say that num. It means that we are going to pass numeric value inside this controller's method. Now, inside this controller's method, we have received that and successfully we have executed that. Again, back to routes.php, save this file, back here, and now if I reload this page, as we can see, missing argument 1 for site service. Back to editor. Now inside this route system, firstly we need to tell about this parameter to this service method. Service method does not actually understand, does not get the value from this num variable. So firstly we will make understand about this method. So we need to wrap this num parameter inside parenthesis. We have successfully passed that. Now we are going to pass this value to our method by using $1 symbol. This is only for the placeholder. It means that inside this service we have a value. After finding this value, we are going to pass that value to our service method. These are only for the placeholders. So if I save this file, back here, reload this page, now as we can see that we have a value of 4. Now if suppose we are not going to pass this $1 symbol, again save this file, reload this page, we have error about missing arguments. Again back to site.php. Now if I make this parameter as an optional parameter, it means that if the value is optional. So again if I save this file, back to our routes.php. Now inside this, okay, close this file first. So back to editor. Now inside this routes.php, firstly we also need to remove this num parameter from here. So if I save all these things, back here, save this page. Now as we can see that the service route has a parameter of 4. Now if I remove this parameter from here, as we can see we have handled all these things by putting this optional parameter, optional value for it. So let's say that we are going to pass two values now inside our parameters. First is the service ID and the second is service name. So let's say that inside p tag, let's say that ID is something what we have inside this ID variable, and also we are going to pass another variable, let's say that service name, and service name we will pass inside this name parameter and we are going to pass it here. So let's say name, it also contains a default value. Save this file, back to routes.php. Now inside this service we have to pass two parameters, either ID and name. Also if we don't want to pass any values to our route, we also do that because we have passed the optional values for these parameters. Now go to routes.php and let's say that the first parameter is about the ID, so it should be numeric value, and also the second parameter what we have is about any. It means that any specific characters, either it will be the name or any value. Now after finding this value, we need to tell about this method that we are receiving two values from the URL. First, it should be the parameter of 1. It means that the first value we are getting from this URL. In the second value, we are getting the name. This is only about the parameters count, parameters placeholder. First is for this parameter and second for this parameter. Now go inside this service method and we have handled all these parameters about ID and the name. So save this file, back to our browser, reload this page. Now initially ID and service name is blank. Why it is blank? Because we have two optional parameters and it is actually taking this blank value. So if I back to browser and let's say that service 3 and it has a name of, let's say, learning. If I press enter, now ID is 3 and the service name is learning. So successfully we are receiving the two values from our routes, and this is about this parameter and about this parameter. So go inside site controller and let's say that inside this public function, let's say product is a method, and also this is all about function product. Inside this product we are going to receive a parameter, and let's say that echo inside h3 tag, let's say that product name, and we are going to receive inside this ID, instead of this ID, let's say name. And also here we have to pass it here and save this file, back to our routes.php. Now inside here we are going to make a method, and that method actually receives some parameters from the URL. So this is product and all about let's say that any, it means that any specific name, and it will call the method something called product. And here is we have one parameter for this method. So back here, now if I remove all these things and let's say that product, after finding this product method we are going to pass our first parameter, and let's say that CodeIgniter, this is our product name. If I press enter, this is our CodeIgniter. So if I back to editor, again I'm telling you guys that this is only for the name purpose. It does not mean that we are going to pass the numeric value or we are going to pass any value. This is only for the understanding. So if I again back to browser, let's say that here we have passed it num. It means that we are going to pass numeric value. No, we are going to pass any value. This is only for the understanding. Again if I back to browser and let's say that instead if I going to pass any value, this is our product. Again if I'm going to pass CodeIgniter, this is our value. It is receiving all either numeric value or any of the value. So finally guys, we have understood about the URL routing in CodeIgniter. The simple things you need to keep in your mind is that how many number of parameters you need to actually attach with any method you need to define here, and also inside the method you need to tell here that either $1, $2 means how many parameters you have. Also by finding these parameters, go to controller's method name, you are going to handle all these parameters. Now if suppose inside this variable we don't have any optional value, it means that if we are not going to pass inside this CodeIgniter value, if I remove this thing from here, as you can see that we have some error missing argument 1. It means that this is restriction for this product method. It means that we have to actually pass the name value as the needed parameter. So if I pass a default value, again if I save this file, reload this page, now successfully we run that because we have handled that. So this is all about the video section of URL routing. So inside this video guys, if you have any doubt then please drop your comment. I will give my reply as soon as possible. So for this video session guys, thank you for watching. Have a great day.